So happy Food Safety Week, and thanks for inviting me on. This year we're looking at all those food safety myths that come up all the time when someone rings us up or asks us, or I do a media interview, and we thought we'd better start addressing these before they become real. The other thing is there are so many crazy influences out there. Things are getting worse and worse as we go along. So we thought we might try and nip these in the buds before they come real. Focusing on this week as Food Safety Week. One of the main things is that people still think food poisoning is only a minor illness, but the study by the ANU and FSIC, shows there's almost 5 million cases of food poisoning a year. That's a huge amount. Close to 48,000 people end up in hospital. There's 38 deaths. It doesn't sound a lot, but, it's still pretty important. And the whole cost of food poisoning, which is $3 billion a year, it's been calculated. And that includes things like time off work for parents, all those things that people forget about, that you've got to look after your kids if they're sick. And it really is such a strain on the economy too. So we've just put all of this into a government grant application, hopefully, so we get some funding for this. So we keep going as a health promotion charity, because it's kind of important. We can do that, and we appreciate the work that EHOs do. It's just fabulous. If you look at the alfalfa recall this week, it's pretty amazing how quickly that can get done these days. So number one, Beth, is the hand washing one. Each year we've done hand washing research and asked consumers whether they wash their hands after they go to the toilet. And, quite a percentage come back saying, no, they don't always wash their hands after going to the toilet. And then when I do radio interviews or TV interviews, people say, well, sure, it's only when they just do a pee. So this year we actually asked that question. It was the weirdest research brief I've ever written, but... So we said, do you always wash your hands after a pee? Do you always wash your hands after a poo? So 28% of men and 18% of women surveyed said they didn't always wash their hands after a pee. But much worse than that, 13% of men and 11% of women said they didn't always wash their hands after a poo. So to put that out there, that's pretty concerning, especially as 43% of men and 39% of women surveyed also admitted they didn't always wash their hands before handling food. So if you look at lining up the holes in the Swiss cheese, as the saying goes, if you're one of those people who don't wash their hands after going to the toilet, and peeing's kind of important too, because toilets aren't the cleanest place if you're going to touch things. And then you go and handle food, you're likely to get a case of food poisoning. It's not a good idea at all. So that was interesting, and that one seems to interest the media most this Food Safety Week. A second myth was looking at our third myth now is looking at washing raw poultry. Over a number of years, we've been doing this and asking people who cook whole raw chicken if they usually wash it before cooking. And we found out that, about half the people do actually say they always wash whole raw chicken before cooking. People wash chicken pieces. There's 48% who wash it with chicken on, and 48% people wash chicken with 44% wash chicken with which is skinless. There, and that amount has actually gone up since we first started asking that back in 2021. And we're really not sure why. All we can think of is back in the old days, you had a backyard chicken, and you would, they don't live forever or lay eggs forever. And, eventually Dad might bash it over the head or wring its neck, literally. And you'd pluck it and, and sort it out and get it ready for cooking. And then you probably need to wash it. But these days, with processed chicken that's already washed during processing, there's no need to do it again. And you're going to be spreading salmonella around the kitchen if you wash it. So it's really not a good idea to do that. Now, the 5-second rule is my favourite. We thought we'd ask people if they really believe that you can actually drop food onto the floor and pick it up after 5 seconds and still eat it okay. Now, surprisingly, bacteria, as you no doubt know, don't politely wait for 5 seconds to contaminate any food that's dropped on the floor. There's a lot of argument, and there have been studies about, if you drop things like cashews onto a floor that's just, a smooth surface and not a carpet. But as a message to consumers, it's really just best to say don't eat it if you've dropped it, because the floor is likely to be contaminated with dirty shoes by pets walking through, and general day-to-day life. So it's really not a good idea. You can't sit down and test every bit of food you drop on the floor to see it. We don't want food waste, but at the same time, ironically, when all my pets have gone to pet heaven, I found that crumbs and stuff do stay on the kitchen floor. They don't magically disappear. And our next myth is, was it the last thing I ate that gave me food poisoning? Now, 66% of Australians we surveyed this year said they'd had some form of food poisoning. They can recall that. And about half of those incorrectly blame the last thing they ate. And it's a little bit hard to get over to people that it can be, a while ago. Certainly if you're talking about listeria, it can be up to 10 weeks before it turns up. If it's a parasitic infection, it can be even longer. So some things are caught pretty quick. Norovirus tends to turn up pretty quickly. But people tend to really blame that last thing they ate, which of course makes environmental health officers' job quite hard, because they're mainly blaming something that's probably incorrect. And other myths we've been going, we actually haven't surveyed, are things like people got pretty wedded to hand sanitizer during COVID and tend to think it's better than hand washing. And we're trying to get over that good old-fashioned hand washing with soap and water and drying on a clean towel is the best thing to do. There's still an enormous amount of confusion after on date marking. And very simply, as we keep saying, use by means use by, best before means best before. It's hard to get that one over to people. And they still ring us up as a charity and ask, I've got this packet of whatever and I haven't eaten that and this and that. And certainly with use by dates, someone even rang up and said, what hour of the day do we actually have to throw it out on the last day of the use by date? And I think we finally came at the compromise of midnight, but people can get a bit obsessive. But it is quite simple to understand, but they don't. We also encourage people not to waste food, to do simple things like when they go shopping, to put the groceries at the back of the pantry or the back of the fridge. They need to be refrigerated, so you're using the older stuff first and not wasting things. And of course, the freezer is your friend. You could be really close to that use by date, but you can, of course, get the food and freeze it. Even things like eggs, you can beat up into smaller portions. You can freeze milk. You can do all sorts of things and hang on to it without wasting it. Few people still think that minced products can be served rare, like whole pieces of meat. So we keep stressing that hamburgers and mince and all sorts of things like that can't be served rare. You need to cook it like the chicken through to 75 centres in the middle. And another myth, of course, is you can tell your food is bad because it smells or tastes off. Obviously, that's not true. And in some cases, we've got, the off milk in the kitchen at work that's probably not going to make you sick, but it's not good for you to drink it anyway. And one final one is people think it's okay to cut mold off of food, when, of course, you've got the risk of mycotoxins there, and it's really not a good idea to do that. So that's one of the main things we try to get over it. But certainly things are getting better. People are understanding use by dates more over the years and complying with them, and understanding best before and complying with them too. It's really gone up over the 10 years or so we've been doing it, by about 20% of people read the storage instructions, which is really important, and comply with them. And 69% read the cooking instructions and 74% say they comply with them. That sounds a weird statistic, but that means they cook that product quite often. So they comply with whatever it is. So that's good. So it certainly is improving as such. But hand washing still is one of the biggest problems we have, and it's a real gender issue. Men are much less likely to always wash their hands after going to the toilet. Young people are less likely than older people to wash their hands. Once people hit 35 or over, their hand washing improves. That's possibly due to parenthood, and you realise that you really do need to keep your hands clean, or just because you're getting more sensible as you hit middle age. But strangely, in the last lot of hand washing we did, the youngest group we survey, 18 to 24-year-olds, were actually better at washing their hands after going to the toilet than the next oldest group of 25 to 34. Um, we think this might be due to perhaps the COVID generation being there and understanding about hand washing a bit better, but we're really not sure. So hopefully that starts to flow through to other generations as such. But certainly, this is a Food Safety Week. We're getting all this information out through the Science Media Centre. We've done 2 media releases already and loads of media right around the country. We've got community packages of posters and quizzes and a sample media release, which people are using. And hopefully councils are also running events. And we've got TV and radio community service announcements, essentially ads, which we get run for free because we're a charity. And they're being run by Tonic Health Media and GP waiting rooms where there's literally a captive audience to watch them. And we have an Indigenous campaign run by Chef Shay Louis from Central Australia. That's going out on National Indigenous Radio. And we've got social media running. So it's a pretty busy few weeks for us. So look out for our ad on TV and also on the radio. And yeah, if you want to find out some more information about Food Safety Week, it's on our website, which is foodsafety.asn.au. Thanks.